mic, so if you have any questions, just, he's a CPA, he doesn't know how to use the mic, but he'll come forward and show you how to do it. I appreciate everybody coming tonight. I hope this is meaningful to you. I've been praying a lot about it, and let's start with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for who you are in our lives. Lord, we commit everything to you. We know you have our life in your hands. And Lord, just give me the wisdom to share some meaningful ideas with the audience tonight. And I thank you for what you did for us on that cross. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. You can tell I'm a little old, but I've been around a while, and I've had 15 different jobs. I work for 15 different companies, not 15 different jobs. And I was thinking about it today. It's amazing. You don't start out life as a 21-year-old coming out of service to work for 15 different companies, but it just happens. And so I want to share with you some of those experiences. My first job, my first 16 years were with IBM. I ended up being the vice president for IBM, and that brought us to Rochester. My wife and I have had 7 different homes we've lived in, and IBM was famous for moving you every 2 years. And my wife moved with me. I mean, that was part of the problem. No, I'm kidding. So we came here, and she said, this is a great place to raise kids and go to school, and that's why we stayed here. So I left IBM in '81, and I went into the telecom business, and that just became my career, usually in sales and executive sales management. But I was president of a company in 2000, a private company, and we raised $3 billion, and that was a real fun thing for me. You travel around the country, and you're trying to pitch all these venture capitalists. But it was pretty much telecom oriented, but always sales. And in sales, as you guys know, you're interviewing a lot of people. I was being interviewed a lot, and I'll share some of those stories with you. But the last 18 years, I've been working with college kids. So I started a business in 2004. I was telling Isaac and Zach earlier, when I started the business, there was $200 billion in student loans. Today, there's $1.7 trillion. And the reason I started the business was I said, I think I can help people not borrow so much money. And that has really become true. I really thank the Lord for that. We've got about 5,000 clients. We've helped a ton of people. And but that has taught me a lot, probably even as much as I learned from my own personal career. And I was sharing with Tony and some people earlier, I think it's almost a criminal that colleges don't take the responsibility for helping people find jobs. They don't. Occasionally you have an outlier like an RIT, but I've visited a lot of colleges, and whenever I go on a college campus, I go to the career placement office, and it's ironic that people working in the career placement office are usually the people that graduated the year before. That is not the person you want teaching your kid how to find a job. And so I've become a big proponent of part of our services now are helping people find out what they want to do. And the reason we do that is because the average person in the U.S. last year graduated with 5.5 years with a 4-year degree. That means they went into school not knowing what they wanted to do, and they changed majors, and that attenuated the process. The other problem is when they get out of school, they don't know what they want to do. And many times they have a crummy degree. I shouldn't say it that way, but we have a saying on our team, a bachelor's degree in psychology is a degree in unemployment, because you got to get a master's or a PhD to market yourself. So we've learned a lot. I personally have learned a lot from helping families and young people shadow people who are doing something that they think they want to do, and then networking with them and helping them find a job. And networking, I'll cover that a little later, but that's like a foreign word to most people. In fact, I was telling somebody earlier, this thing has changed every young person's, it's changed everybody's life, but I was reading the other day that the average person in America spends 41% of their time on a screen, some kind of screen. And I can tell you with teenagers, it's probably 80%. And this has really, I think, affected communication. People can't talk. They can't talk like adults. They don't place a premium on communication. So what we do, we teach the student how to interview, and I'll share that with you, the actual strategy we use, and I'll share a lot of tips that I hope will help you. So let's get started. And the first thing we're going to talk about is who is an attractive candidate. You know, I was just reading an article before I came up here on this is January, and you need a New Year's resolution. So I'm not challenging anybody personally, but I'm just saying in general, if you're in a job that you don't like, why don't you leave here tonight saying, you know, I'm going to start thinking about changing my job and doing something I like, either for more money or something I want to do. And let me just say this, for anybody in attendance and those online, if you want to call me, my number is 585-202-1636. Andy, my co-worker, will tell you, I help people all the time. In fact, let me share a quick story with you. This is, I'll probably tell you more stories than you want to hear, but I got a call about 2 weeks ago from a young man who I work with. He was from Marion, New York. His name was Nick. And he called me and he said, Paul, you know, you really helped me with college. You saved me a lot of money, but I want a job. Can you help me find a job? I said, sure, Nick, that's what I do. He said, well, I'm in Portland, Maine. Do you know anybody up here? So I said, well, Nick, it's not necessarily where I go for coffee, but let me try to help you. So I said, what's your degree in? And he said, sustainability. I said, Nick, what does that mean? He said, I'm not sure. Now, here's a guy with a 4-year degree, and I'm not being critical if some of you guys are pursuing that, but I said, well, Nick, let me do some research, and then called me back in a couple days. So I went on, I'm not a genius. I went on Google, and I Googled environmental firms in Portland, Maine, and private firms. There were 4 of them. And then I Googled their CEO. 2 of them were women, 2 of them were men. So he called me back, and I said, Nick, here's what I want you to do. And if this is the way you would approach it, kind of challenge yourself. I said, Nick, here's the names of these people that are CEOs. I want you to call them up and say, I'm thinking about going for a grad degree in sustainability, God help you. And I want to come in and talk to you about your company and find out what you do. You know what his answer to me was? I can't do that. I said, why not? He said, because that's lying. I said, Nick, you're not asking them to lend you money. You're just going in, you want some information. But the great news is, he called me a couple of days later, he said 2 of them offered me jobs. Now, think about that. That's not a stroke of genius. That's not like giving life to somebody. That's just networking ideas. And that's what everybody can do. And I'd be happy to help anybody doing that. So what do you want to do? That's the first thing. And this is easy for me because I've been in sales and marketing my whole life. But you may be in something you absolutely hate. And I can guarantee you, just as sure as you're sitting here, if you tell me you want to go to work for somebody, I can help you do that. People are looking, we were talking earlier over pizza, Isaac and I, and Andy, people are looking for people who want to work in their companies. They don't want people who don't want to work in their companies. And hopefully when we get done with the interview part of it, you'll see what I mean. So do what you want to do. And in fact, I challenge high school kids and college kids all the time. Don't borrow $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 to do something you're going to hate. And people do that all the time. I can tell you, it's epidemic in the world of high school graduates and college. The other thing is, just like this Portland, Maine story, what does the company want? Nobody ever asks the company, what are you looking for? And I'll get into this a little further when we talk about interviewing, but every owner, business owner or manager will be very forthcoming about what they're looking for. Now, your challenge is to match your interests and talents up with what they're looking for. And I'll share with you how to do that when we get into interviewing. What does the hiring manager want? I can tell you, I manage big organizations and some small ones. Most hiring managers do not know what they're looking for. Now, in sales, it was easy because we wanted somebody who would make their quota. That was easy. It was very measurable, and so there was no guesswork. But most companies do not know what they're looking for. I can tell you that. I mean, I've been in organizations all over the place, and they just don't know what they want. So it's up to you to make yourself attractive to them based on what they tell you they want, and we'll talk about that. The other thing is, what are your strengths? This article that I was referring to is in the Wall Street Journal, and it's kind of a January New Year's article. And they said, this is a great time, and it challenged me to read it, and I hope it challenges you. This is a good time to evaluate your strengths. What are your real strengths? Don't fool yourself. right? If you don't like people, don't put that down as a strength. Whatever you like, make sure you understand and are able to articulate it. Now, one of the things I'm going to talk about a little later, but it bears repeating right now, is this. And this is what we do with young people. What I do with, I teach high school graduates who are about to go to college how to interview. And what I say is the most powerful thing you can do in an interview is go in and understand that this is my strength and here's a story that's emblematic of that, a metaphor. So if you tell me I'm organized, great. Tell me in your own personal experience what it means to be organized. And I got to share this with you because I've been doing this for 18 years and probably teaching people how to interview college or high school kids for 10. And this is the best thing that ever happened. This is before COVID. My offices are in Honea Falls. I was sitting in my office, and the consultants I work with will say, now you're going to meet with Paul, and he's going to talk to you about interviewing. He's going to take you through like 45 minutes of questions and answers. He's going to challenge you. But the one thing he's going to ask you right out of the gate is, what's your number one strength, and what's the story, the metaphor behind that? Because we have a saying, facts tell, but stories sell. People might not remember you're organized, but if you have a story that shows you're organized, they remember it. So this young guy comes in. He was from Pittsburgh, Sutherland. His name was Cy. His father was an orthopedic surgeon, and the father had graduated from Northeastern in Boston. Cy wanted to go to Northeastern. So the consultant that was working with Cy, her name was Jill, and he sits down in front of me, and I never met the young guy before. And I said, Cy, I know Jill probably told you what I'm going to ask you. What's your strength? The kid says to me, have you ever shopped at Wegmans? I said, what? He said, have you ever shopped at Wegmans? I said, Cy, I've lived here 30 years. Yeah, that's like saying, do you breathe? He said, no, have you ever shopped at Wegmans? I said, Cy, yes. He said, what? Do you know the most important job at Wegmans? I said, I don't think I do. He said, it's the helping hands people, the people that bring their carts in. I said, why are they so important? He said, because if you don't have carts, you can't shop. Now I'm a little irritated. He's already used 10 minutes of his time, and he's running around the bush as far as I'm concerned. I said, Cy, you're using your time. What is your strength? He said, I'm responsible. I said, how are you going to prove? What's the story behind responsible? Now, here's what he told me. This is really powerful. He said, I've worked at the Monroe Avenue store for, part-time cashier for like 13 months. And the manager, who was a lady, said to him, Cy, we're taking all the helping hand supervisors for an off-site training session, 4th of July weekend, which I didn't realize, but he said that's the most busiest weekend Wegmans has. Parking lot's crowded, you can't get a parking spot. She said, I want you, this is a 17-year-old kid, I want you to manage the helping hands people for that weekend. And he said, I told her, come on, I'm a 17-year-old kid. These are special needs people. These are minorities. These are adults. They won't listen to me. She said, I've watched you for 13 months. You're an excellent communicator. Everybody respects you. You're very responsible. I said, good story. How'd it go? He pulls the letter out of his pocket on Wegmans letterhead, signed by the store manager, saying, I asked this young guy to do this, and here's what happened. It couldn't have been any better. I said, Cy, don't ever lose that letter. Think about what that letter means to somebody that's just meeting you for the first time. And that's a metaphor for what you need. You need something like that people are going to remember. So based on that letter and some other things, we were able to get him. He got an initial $7,000 scholarship from Northeastern. We got him another $5,000. I mean, it probably blew the people away when he told them what his strength was. I mean, how many people say, I'm responsible? So that's kind of what we're talking about, and that's what we train the kids to do. Not everyone's that dramatic, but if you zero in on what your strength is, you can come up with it, and you can come up with a story that's emblematic of that strength, and that's the number one thing you want to use when you're trying to impress somebody you're meeting for the first time. And in fact, one of the things we'll talk about later, it's good to try to control the interview. Years ago, I was working in the telecom business, and I was being interviewed by Rochester Telephone as the executive sales vice president. And so I knew the CEO just a little bit. He and I had coached Little League together. His name was Ron Bittner, great guy. But I didn't know him well. And so his secretary called me up and said, Ron wants to meet you at your Genesee Country Club for breakfast. So It's a pretty big job. It was important to me. I had a good job at MCI, but thought this would be better. And so I sit down to breakfast with Ron, and we caught up, and he said to me, Paul, can I be frank with you? I said, sure, Ron. He said, I've never interviewed anybody in my life. This is the CEO of a multi-million-dollar telecom company. He said, would you help me with it? I said, Ron, that's why we're here. I said, sure, I'll help you. But that made such an impression on me that, first of all, he would be honest enough to tell me, I don't know what I'm doing. But it also told me that a lot of people that interview people don't know what they're doing. So don't assume when you go in for an interview that this person, I've also had people pull out a book and say, do you mind if I read the questions from the book? And these are big jobs. I mean, they're not, not nickel and dime jobs. So it's important when you go into an interview, you know your strength and you can control the interview. The last thing I would talk about in this regard is this a match for you? Is this a match financially? Is it a match from hour-wise? Because people take jobs just to take jobs. You do not have to do that in this economy. People are struggling for employees. So do some research about that. Okay, let's talk about what is a good fit. And this is, again, using the first of the year as a New Year's resolution thing. This is a great time to be honest with yourself and maybe have this discussion with your spouse or a good friend. What's a perfect job for me? If you could wipe the slate clean, what would be the perfect job for you? And that's what you should aim for. Don't compromise. People compromise all the time, and I know bills get in the way, you need money, but you really need to be candid with yourself about what is the perfect job for you. Because otherwise you're wasting your time. I mean, otherwise it'll be turnover city. Right now, my wife said I used to change jobs every 18 months. And a lot of that was enticements. I got stock options, and I just like changing jobs. But the other reason I was in demand was not because of me. It was because of the sales reps that followed me around. My wife used to call me the Pied Piper because I would leave a job and 22 salesmen would come with me, and that was very valuable. So know what your strength is and know what you're bringing to the job. That's extremely important. But the other thing that's almost as important is, what don't you like about the job? What are the disconnects? I've heard people, I've got a lot of young people who work at Wegmans. Some of them love it, some of them don't. I have a young lady right now who, she graduated from Fisher. She was the best cake decorator I've ever met in my life. Not that I met a lot of them, but I had her make cakes for our parties at our company. It was phenomenal. I mean, she put college emblems on it. I mean, she was so good. Her name is Taylor. And I thought she had a wonderful career at Wegmans. She worked for Wegmans for about 6-7 years while she was going to Fisher. She called me up a couple of weeks ago and said, they're cutting my hours. I don't think they value what I'm doing. I said, what do you want to do? She said, get me a job in marketing. I taught her how to interview, called a friend up who knows everybody in radio. She called me the other day. She said, I just got 3 offers from different radio stations. So think about what that did to change her life. Everybody can do that. That's not impossible. Is there any wiggle room in the job? If many people think that the job is black and white, but if it's not the same hours you're looking for, if it's not the same money you're looking for, we'll talk about money a little later. If you don't hear anything else I say tonight, remember this: do not compromise. Too many people compromise and get stuck in something and end up working 10, 12, 15 years, and they hate every minute of it. That is absurd. I'm living, breathing proof. I'm not the most talented person in the world, but I never let that stop me from changing jobs. And most of them were, and I got fired a couple times, but most of them were very positive changes. So be a little more flexible in your interests. And then the last thing is, and we'll talk about compensation in detail, but is compensation an attraction, I should say, or is it an issue? You don't want to go do a job. I met my wife's in a couple of Bible studies. She said to me, would you meet with this woman and her daughter? The kid's name is Liberty. And I met with her, and I'll just give you a little bit of backstory. So I met with her in a Starbucks, and I said, Liberty, your mom said you're having trouble, thinking about your career. And she said, well, I am. I said, what do you want to do? She said, I want to be a baker. I said, okay, I have some bakers. One of the things we do, we have 5,000 clients, so I can probably put you you individually in connection with anybody who you can imagine. We've got 2 kids going to be astronauts in Huntsville, Alabama. So there's not a career that you can aspire to that I can't connect you with somebody and you can talk to them. And we really recommend that, by the way. We recommend that you talk to people that are doing a job, and we actually script it. We say, how did you get into the job? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Did you consider anything else? Where'd you go to school? Did you make any changes? If you had your life to do it all over again, would you do it? And these are questions that we suggest the young person ask the person, because people are very, very forthcoming when you talk to them about their work, particularly if you're young. So in this case, I'm meeting with this mother and daughter, and the conversation went something like this, and this is not uncommon. I said, well, you want to be a baker, right? Yeah, and what do you want to do? Oh, I want to go to Johnson & Wales or the Culinary Institute. I said, oh, wait a minute. Those are expensive schools. Have you been to school before? Yeah, I flunked out of MCC. Oh, okay. So that was an issue, right? So I said, that was a red flag for me. I said, well, wait a minute. How about Alfred? Then she said, well, I know they're expensive. How about Alfred State? I said, what's the attraction of Alfred State? She said, my boyfriend goes there. I said, okay. That's an attraction. But I said, what are you doing now? I'm working at the Village Bakery in Pittsburgh. How much do you make? $11.50 an hour. Okay. Do you work with anybody who's gone to college and is working there? Yeah, Alicia works with me. I said, great. Where did Alicia go? She went to Johnson & Wales. She's got a bachelor's degree. Okay. Does she like it? No, she doesn't like it. The boss sucks, and they promised her to work at the Army where they do all their baking, and they sent her out to Pittsburgh, and she doesn't like it. I'm sorry.
From the book of Psalms.
Sorry,
Verse
guys.
18 and 2 read.
God, talk about telecom. So she said, I said, what does Alicia make? She said, $17 an hour. I said, do you think that you can go to Alfred State or any college and graduate and make $17 an hour and pay the loans back? She said, well, I haven't really considered that. I said, well, maybe you should think about that. And I said, why don't you take Alicia out for a drink or coffee and really probe her and say, if you had your life to do all over again. She said, well, that's kind of personal. I said, the decision you're making is kind of personal. And so I came home and my wife said, how did it go? I said, I don't think I changed it. But the mother said to me, and this is very common, can't you give her a test to tell her what she wants to do? That is the biggest fallacy in the world. It just doesn't work. We give tests, and I know we've been doing them for 18 years. It doesn't work. You have to talk to people that are doing it right now. So, and the last thing is who is not hiring. Obviously, you don't want to try to swim upstream if they're, if they're not hiring. But I can tell you, people, I don't care whether they say they're hiring or not, they will make room for a good person. If you fit the mold that they're looking for, they'll make room for you because they never know who's going to leave or who's going to attrit, and that's a big deal. So, let's talk about a targeted resume. If besides interviewing, besides the lack of interview skills, I would say the resumes that I see are just about the worst I've ever seen. Most of them are academic resumes. By that I mean they talk about the A's they got in junior biology or whatever. They're also 3 or 4 pages, which is absolutely a mistake. A resume should never be more than 1 page. And it should never have more than 3 bullet points on the front page, and it should have a vision statement on the top. Like, I want to do this. Andy and I met the other day with somebody, we both met for the first time. He's a lawyer. And he said, can you help me find a job? I said, yeah, I think I can. I know a lot. He sent me his resume. It was like a 5-page resume. I said, man, who would ever write that resume? I mean, but people do it all the time. They do not know what they're doing. And to me, resume writing is an art, but it's not that difficult. The number one thing on a resume should be your vision statement, what you want to do. Not necessarily that day, but in your life. And the vision, if you're trying to get a job and impress an employer, that vision statement should sync up with what that employer could be looking for. That's a big, big deal. So the power of a vision statement is great. What, in your mind, be ready to articulate. You don't put it on the resume because you don't want to be more than 1 page. What does the perfect job look like to you? Have you ever had a perfect job? What would it look like? And then that first page should not have more than 3 positions on it. And I don't care if you worked at 50 companies. The only thing, and I've hired a ton of people never look beyond the first page, and they don't look beyond the first 3 bullet points. I don't care what they tell you. I've never turned a resume over. In fact, it's easy with salespeople because I say, I don't care where you went to college. I want to know, do you bring your A game every day, and do you have a positive attitude? Because we can teach you everything else. That's all I care about. In fact, most people, without saying that, that's what they're looking for. They really are. And the other thing is your resume should be flexible. So a resume that you might use for Gleason Works is not the same resume you're going to use for a law firm. You really need to be flexible. In fact, here's what I recommend. If you're looking at a specific company, call the HR person up, the human resource person, who may or may not be in the hiring stream, and say, tell me if you were hiring another person, what would you be looking for? Give me some feedback. They'll always do that for you. And I can tell you, one of the biggest things I look for, and I think most people do, is attitude. If you bring your A game every day, you can teach a person to do anything else. That's a big, big deal. So I think, with LinkedIn and all the social media platforms that are available, I think resumes can be a real help. They can also be a tremendous detriment. I mean, I've been out of the job market for 20 years now, and I still get LinkedIn solicitations because they're looking for sales executives. I know that. So just remember that. You need to create a targeted resume, one page only, with a vision statement on the top. Okay, let's spend a little time on, whoops, that's not that one. Hang on a second. Let's talk about a most effective approach. I think the networking is a lost art. Just like that story I told you about Nick. Nick would never in his wildest imagination call those people up in Portland, Maine. That wasn't on his radar screen. Not a dumb guy, got a degree from SUNY Albany, but that would have never been on his radar screen. You need to be creative when you network. And I can tell you, people will talk to you ad infinitum. If I want to know something about paychecks, I could call Jesse, and Jesse would tell me everything. I mean, not confidential stuff, but he would tell me, here's what they're looking for. Here's 5 openings. What kind of person do you have? I mean, Jesse and I have had this conversation. I've sent him people. Gee, thanks for sending her. I think he was more impressed with how good she looked. Oh, I'm kidding, Jess. But he would tell me everything. And everybody's got those connections, and you got to make use of them. And in fact, Jesse, he's a good friend, but they're always looking for people. They're a growth company. They're not stagnating, So, in fact, this lawyer that I was referred to that had the 5-page resume, I didn't want to tell him on email to change his resume. I said, give me a call. He hasn't called back yet. But I sent him, I did a little research. U of R's hiring attorneys, Bausch & Lomb is hiring attorneys, and one other company, I can't remember. And he said, well, how can I get to them? Now, here's a guy with a law degree and doesn't know how to approach a company. But that's very common, I can tell you. They just don't think like that. So it's really important that you network and be creative in your networking. Don't just figure, well, I have to apply through the regular chain of command. That's not it. If you do your networking appropriately, you can probably circumvent the chain of command. If you find out what department's hiring, it's easy to do. And you need to be able to articulate what your ideal job is. And I know sometimes that's tough to do when you're coming out of school, but that's really, really important because you never know who's going to say to you, what are you looking for? Like this young lady, Taylor, that I was telling you about, the cake decorator. She said to me, I said, Taylor, what do you want to do? She said, I want to be in sales and marketing. I said, great. One of my close friends runs the biggest advertising agency in Rochester. I called Bruce up and I said, Bruce, can you talk to Taylor? And he called me back. He said, Paul, she's really sharp. He said, I sent her resume to 3 radio stations, and they all want to interview her. And she got 2 job offers. So it's not difficult. I mean, it just opens doors for you. But be honest with yourself about what your limitations are. And don't ever discount, like I said about Nick going to those environmental conservation, don't ever underestimate the power of informational meetings. You don't have to call it an interview. You're just trying to get information on the company and what they possibly could be looking for. So it's not threatening to anybody, but it's very powerful for you. And then how do you identify a match? Well, the match has got to be what you want to do. It's got to be compensation correct. It's got to be all the things you think about. But it's great when you're in the driver's seat and can make that decision. And we'll get into this in a minute. But don't ever think that the first monetary offer they offer you is the only one they offer you. In my career, I can tell you that's never the case, and I'll tell you how I use that. So let's talk about interviewing well. I mentioned you need to know your strength. If I went around the room just out of hand and said, Wendy, what's your strength? I happen to know Wendy well. I know her strengths, I should say. But everybody has strengths. The fact of the matter is they don't know how to articulate them, and they don't have a story behind the strength. That's a big deal. Big deal. Remember, facts tell, but stories sell. You need to be able to describe what you're looking for effectively. And the best way to do that is run your scenario by a friend. Say, how does this sound to you? I'm looking for this kind of job. Does this make sense? And let that friend, hopefully a friend, kind of give you guidance. Because people go into interviews cold, and it's the dumbest thing you can do. Really bad. The other thing we talk about with young people is this. Let me give you this example. So I have a client, her name is Lucille, and I was training her, she's from Penfield. I was training her to do an interview for college. And I said, before the interview, Lucille, I'm going to write down, in this interview, it's like 45 minutes, I'm going to write down every time you say like. And we got done with it, and I said, Lucille, how many times do you think you said like? She said, 5 or 6 times. I said, 47 times. That is the way young people talk. I understand that. Or you know. You need to speak like an adult. If you speak like a young person, they're going to treat you like a young person. And one of the worst ways is those phrases that you just fall into as habit. You got to cure yourself of that. And you can do it with practice, but you need to be aware of it. And somebody's got to love you enough to say, "Don't say that anymore. That you sound very young. You don't sound mature when you do that." The other thing is when you're interviewing is think about what you're really looking for. I can tell you, I've interviewed for so many jobs, it's crazy. But the best interviews are when I got fired, because now I was looking for another job. And usually at my level, I got a nice severance package, so there wasn't any pressure on me. But, I've been in situations where I turned the job down. And they say, well, why are you turning the job down? Well, I don't think we got a good fit here. Well, how about if we gave you more money? Well, okay, maybe the fit got a little better. How about if we give you stock options? I remember, this is crazy, but that company that I told you about, that we raised all the money, I was the president of the company, raised $3 billion, and we were doing pretty well. I thought we were doing well. But the board said to me, Paul, we need somebody who's a different cut. They wanted a financial guy, and I was a sales guy. I said, I understand. So they said, we're going to let you go, but we're going to give you 6 months severance. We're going to invest all your stocks, and it was a great deal. So, I pretended I was sad, but I wasn't sad. And so I go home, and the next day we were going to Ocean City, New Jersey. We go there every year, and we were renting a beach house, and I don't even think I told Mary that I got fired. I can't remember. Maybe I did, but so we go to the beach house, and I'm on the boards at Ocean City, and I don't think I had a cell phone then. I can't remember. I think I went up to make a call, and there's a phone message for me, and it's a guy that worked for me at Rochester Tel 5 years ago, and he said, I heard you got fired. Word travels fast, I said, well, yeah, John. His name was John Duda. I said, yeah, John, I did, but, they treated me really fairly. He said, well, I've got an opportunity for you. Now, I wasn't fired 48 hours. That's how long I was out of a job. And I really wasn't out of a job because they were paying me. He said, where are you? And I said, I'm in Ocean City, New Jersey. We just started a vacation. He said, well, could you come up to Portland, Maine? And they owned a telephone company in Portland, Maine. They were buying little phone companies. That's why they wanted to hire me, to put a sales force together to do that. I said, John, I paid $10,000 for this beach house. I don't want to go. My wife will kill me. He said, well, Paul, this is a really good deal. It was a Charlotte, North Carolina company, Fairpoint Communications. He said, the board wants you to come up and have dinner with them, and they'll make you an offer. I said, John, it's such an inconvenient, and I tried to get out of it. So I went to Mary. I said, Mary, this is silly. You're going to think I'm nuts. She said, go. We're in the beach house. We don't care where you go. So She was really concerned about my mental health. So, true story. So, and she'll verify it. So she did say, she said, "Go ahead. I don't care. We're here. We're at the shore." So they had left airline tickets for me into Philadelphia Airport. That's about an hour away. And I drive up there, and I fly to Portland, and I have dinner with these 6 people. Never met them before. I knew John Duda, but I didn't know the other 5. And at the end of it, John says, "Come on, let's go get a cup of coffee or a drink or something." I said, "Okay," because I was flying back the next day. I was staying at the Marriott. He said to me, "They want to make you an offer." Now, I didn't say, there was no interview at all. It was more like, "Hey, do you want the potatoes or do you want," I mean, it wasn't an interview. I didn't think it was. But they just wanted to see who I was. And they had done a lot of research on, what they wanted me to do. So John said to me, "Paul, they want to make you an offer." I said, "John, what's the offer?" He said, "Well, what do you want?" And that's the only time this has ever happened to me. I said, "Well, what are you offering?" He said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, John, I've just met these guys. I don't know." He said, "How about 250?" I said, 250,000? He said, "Yeah." I said, "Boy, that's a little low." And that was 50 grand more than I was making at the other company. But I knew I kind of had them over the barrel. He said, "Well, how about this? We'll make it 250, 275, and we'll give you a $100,000 bonus if you hired a team and do whatever we want you to." I said, "That's kind of low end, but I'll take it." So I fly back to New Jersey, and my wife said, "How'd it go?" I said, "It was okay." She said, "Well, did they make you an offer?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm not sure." She said, "Well, what do you mean it's okay?" I said, "Well, I'm going to take it." She said, "Well, that's good. Now let's enjoy our vacation because now you finally got another job." But those things happen, and the reason they happen is because I think I had the reputation of being able to hire a lot of people, and that's what we did. We hired a ton of people, and we were able to, deliver on what we promised, and I was there for 3 years. So networking is important. The connections you make are important, and don't ever alienate anybody if you can help it. That's, John Duda didn't work for me at Rochester Tel, but he knew me by reputation at Rochester Tel. So, that's a little bit of my backstory. And interviewing well is just, it's a skill that if you can. Let me see where we were here. Did we do interview well? So let's talk about negotiating for more compensation. And I think this is where people really are timid. The number one thing that I found, and this is as a hiring person and as a person trying to be hired, is be prepared to say what your monthly needs are. So I don't care what they offer you. Just say hypothetically, they offer you $1,500 a month or $1,500 a week. Say, that's really good, but I have cash flow requirements that require I make $2,000. And that gets you out of the, "Oh, you're trying to put a gun to my head." No, I'm not. These are my requirements. So this is something I need. Now, I understand if you can't make that commitment to me, but I just want you to know that really works. I've had people do it with me. I've done it with many people, and it really works. You don't want to get in a situation where you're holding a gun to somebody's head and saying, "I need to make," you got to, I was making more last time, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to take a cut and pay. Those are terrible conversations to have. But if you say, "My cash flow requirements are," right away, it's a neutral statement. That's a big deal. And it works every time. Now, they may say, "Well, we can't meet that." Okay, I understand. But I'm just telling you my cash flow requirements are. And that's a way to negotiate for more money when you're in a job. Look, I love the job. I love everything about it. How am I doing? "Oh, you're doing great." "Well, I just want you to know my cash flow requirements are, and I'm under that." And you know what? I would say 75% of the time it works. They may not give you everything you want, but it's a conversation that everybody's comfortable with. So just remember that term, cash flow requirements. The other thing about interviewing well is, have you researched the position? We were talking about, like Taylor, when she went to those 3 radio station interviews, I said, "Now, Taylor, talk to Bruce about what they're looking for." And she knew exactly what they were looking for. And so when she went into the interview, she said, "I understand you're looking for somebody who wants to cold call." "Yep, that's what I love to do." So she went in informed about what they were looking for. That is so powerful. And so that really worked for her. She got 2 out of 3 offers, I think. What will success look like for you? It's not always money. It could be training to do something else. It could be putting in a position where you're going to expand your horizons. That's fine. But it's important when you're interviewing to tell them what you're looking for. People aren't candid enough in an interview. They think, well, I can't really be honest. I can't. Maybe I got to hold this one back. No. Tell them exactly, in a nice way, not in a demanding way. Do you think this could happen here? Like one of the tricks or techniques I used to use is, because I got quite a few interviews, I'd say, tell me exactly what you're looking for in this position you want me to fill. Sometimes they say, we don't know. Sometimes they say, we just want you to bring in 20 new salesmen. That's fine. Sometimes they say, we want you to make quota. We want you to build the organization, make quota. That's great. But if they can't tell you what they're looking for, maybe you should say, I understand that. Is there anybody that I could talk to in the organization that can tell me what you're looking for? Because if you go into a situation and you don't know what they're looking for and they can't tell you what they're looking for, that's not a good situation. And the higher up you go in organizations, I can tell you from my own personal experience, the more that happens. They don't know what they don't know. Like when I went to Rochester Tel, they were a local telephone company, regulated, right? They never sold a thing in their life. So they were bringing me in from MCI because I had competitive telecom experience at MCI. And so when I met with some of the people, they became some of my best friends. But they literally said to me, the CFO said to me, I don't know why we're bringing you in. We just want you to increase the revenue. That's fine. And I said, Lou, that's fine. But he said, how do we know you're the right guy? I said, I don't know. You brought me in. I didn't come looking. I'm working at MCI now. I guess somebody did the research and found out that I was pretty good at what I did. He said, that's a good answer. So people aren't, when people are really candid with you in an interview, that's a good interview. If people dance around your questions, but the responsibility is on your part to have the questions, right? And it's not bad to go in, write them down before you go in. Hey, we've had a great conversation here, but there's 3 or 4 things I'd like to know. Could you just give me your opinion on these? That's a great interview. If you can make it, I tell college kids, if you walk out of an interview and you think it was an interrogation, that sucks. If you walk out of an interview and it was a conversation, that's a great interview. So remember that. Conversation, not interrogation. Also remember, facts tell, but stories sell. You guys may not remember anything else I said, but you remember the story about Wegmans Helping Hands. People remember stories. And if you can connect a story with who you are, like when I was at the last company, let me tell you what I did. That's a big deal. Or let's take Jacob. So Jacob is the head of the worship band. Jacob is in the Navy Reserve. Jacob has worked his way through college. Jacob just married Leah. Those are important things to be ready to say in an interview. Don't think an interview is like nothing personal. People want to know you're a person and what you do. Listen, if Jacob walked into me, first of all, I know he's a great guy. I'd hire him in a heartbeat. But if he said to me, on Sundays I lead a worship band, I'd say, whoa, I'm a Christian. He's a Christian. Well, now you're not going to hire him because he's a Christian, but that's a big plus in my mind. So you're looking for those pluses. And if you don't have a conversation about those, it's a lousy interview. And unfortunately, just like I told you about Ron Bittner, some people don't know how to interview. So don't go into an interview assuming, oh man, they know what they're talking about, because they don't. The average person got a job just like you're trying to get a job, and they may have read a book on interviewing, but they don't really know what it's all about. And these are the kind of things I try to communicate to college or high school kids going to college. What colleges tell us is, and you guys know this, we don't believe the essay the kids write because it can be artificially, AI created. And I've had clients from Manhattan tell me, we pay $5,000 for somebody to write my daughter's essay. Colleges tell us we know that. But what colleges tell us, you can't fake a Zoom interview. If you can do a good in-person or Zoom interview, you own them. So what we do, we set up the interview with the head of the department the student's going to major in. That's powerful, powerful. Because nobody does that. because everybody goes through admissions. We don't believe in that. We believe you want to talk to the people that are going to have a material effect on your career. So I think I've exhausted everything I wanted to talk about. Let's see. Did we do negotiation? Yep. Any questions? You guys have been great. Covered a lot of things. Yeah, Tony?
Paul, this has been awesome. Thank you. Under the interview well, you had the bottom bullet there. You said ask for the position. And I didn't know if you... Oh, hi.
You can hang on if you
Yeah,
want.
sure. In case anybody missed that, thank you, Paul. You're doing a great job with this. On the last segment about interview well, at the very bottom you had a bullet that said ask for the position, and I didn't know if you wanted to elaborate on that.
Let me put a little more color on that. Actually, what I always do in my own personal career, I always start the interview by saying, can you give me a little more color on what you're looking for? And then at the end, say, gosh, all the things you mentioned, I seem like I do. When can I start? I mean, I was a sales guy, so I always was closing. But you don't have to do that. I mean, you know, that can be intimidating for people. But if they tell you if they can't tell you what they're looking for, that's a tell. That's a real tell. And that happens a lot. Like, I don't know what I'm looking for. Well, we may be hiring somebody for this or maybe that. Or, well, specifically, why are we talking? I mean, again, it's a conversation, right? Not interrogation. You want it to be two ways. And the way to make it two ways is you go in with your own agenda. Like, I'm coming in, and I know what my skill set is. I know what my strengths are. My strengths are I can take and bring a sales organization to you in 30 days that you'll never hire, nobody else could hire because they're loyal to me. Now, if you're not looking for that, I understand, but that's what I can do. Oh, really? I didn't know. You know, so you're not trying to upset them, but you want to be direct with them, and that's the best interview you can have. The best interview you can have is one that starts out, what are you looking for? You know, I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. Tony, what are you looking for? And then shut up. And people will bob, and they'll bob and weave. They may not be able to answer you, but that's a tell if they can't answer you, right? You don't want to go in a situation where they don't know what they're looking for. Now, it can be, oh, we're looking for a body, right? And they won't say that, but maybe that's what they're looking for. But I think
And somehow in that question, what are you looking for, it almost tells them, I'm on your team and I'm going to help you find that.
yeah. Well,
Whether I'm
the other
that
thing,
person or not.
the other thing you can do, and I'm not saying be deceitful, but if they tell you what they're looking for, say, man, that's me. That's a great way to start an interview, right? Wow, I'm glad you called me in because I can do all that. You need to be confident. You know, Jesse will tell you. I mean, of course, we're salespeople, but you always have to be selling. Nobody can sell you better than you can sell yourself. And if you don't take advantage of that, you're really, really undermining your ability. And, you know, you don't have to be like we are, you know, we're like closing all the time, but right, Jess? But that impresses you. Listen, I can tell you, Jesse, because I know Jesse well, if somebody walked in and said, a recent college graduate, and said, you know, Jesse, what are you looking for? And he says, well, we're looking for somebody that can do this, and this. Wow, that's exactly what I learned in college. I think I could do that, you know? That gets the interview off on the best foot you can get it off on. You know, so I just think it's interview is a lost art. And go ahead, Jess.
I can share just from some of my experience too, because you know me and Paul are close. We're very similar. We've held similar roles, but just to reinforce a couple of things that Paul mentioned. For one, looking outside of the box when it comes to networking, because I'm in a role now, I've worked at Paychex for a number of years. I'm in a role now that I love, but I don't have direct reports anymore. I don't really hire anyone. But this individual email, I get a lot of emails. This guy emailed me, and his email was so grabbing to me because he was like, he thought I was a sales manager and hiring sales manager, and he said, I will outline, call me back, email me. I will email you a 30-day plan of how I'm going to come in and increase sales and increase revenue and everything. And I was just so grabbed by his dedication and his time, and he was so intent. I told him, I said, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not a hiring sales manager anymore. I'm going to get you in contact with somebody who is, because it's such a powerful I love your energy. I love that you found me, you went in there, and you grabbed me, and it was, I will do whatever it takes to get this job. That's somebody I was like, I'll get you to who you want to know. And then the other aspect too that Paul mentioned, stories tell the stories. If you are an experienced interviewer like Paul, like myself, and you're a hiring sales manager, we know that we'll find the truth in the story. So anybody can say, I'm responsible. I'd be like, great, tell me about a time that you were responsible. If your story stinks and it's you can't tell details, there's no detail behind it, right? For me, I'm like, if you are responsible, those stories should be evident. They should be quick, right? They should be detailed. That's how we know you're telling the truth, right? Like, because you want to convince them. You want them to know that what you're saying is true. Everyone's going to come in. Nobody's going to come in there and say, I'm a really, really kind of a lazy guy. I really struggle with organization. I mean, you've probably heard it. I mean, you hear some crazy stuff in interviews. People tell you some really weird stuff. But everybody's going to say, hey, I'm the best employee. I am super confident. Yeah, I'm the guy that you want to do. Again, experienced interviewers are going to say, great, tell me about a time with that.
Yeah.
If you can't come up with anything, or you're struggling, or you're really struggling to find it, again, if you're struggling, I know you're not naturally confident.
Right.
I know you're not, because if you are naturally confident, you have a story. You know you have something right there ready to go. And again, it really does engage, especially
Well, the
in
other
the
thing
interview.
I would just add to what Jesse said, it's not bad to say to the person who's interviewing you, who would I be replacing and what did they do right or wrong? It's powerful. It's just powerful because it makes them think. And again, remember what we're looking for. We're looking for conversation, right? We're not looking for interrogation. So just like Jesse said, when there's a metaphor or a story behind it, that gets the conversation going, right? I mean, if you're meeting somebody for the first time, I mean, you don't want to know who they are all about or what their likes or dislikes are. It's a very, very limited conversation. So if you can get them talking about, well, the last guy, let me tell you why he failed. Oh, really? Well, let me tell you how I would handle that. That's powerful. If you can get to that level in a conversation, boy, you really own them. So, yeah, Josh.
You mentioned about like practicing like with somebody, talking with somebody about it. Give us some more in that. I don't need that.
Sure.
Give us some more in that.
Well, here's what I do, and Andy's heard me do it. So, again, these are mostly high school seniors, but I do a lot. I just did it with a kid who just graduated Cornell. He wanted to go on for the grad school, and I talked him out of it. So he said, well, this is true. His name is Owen. He lives in Auburn, and he said to me, he was on the phone with his mom, and he said to me, I'm thinking about grad school. I said, Owen, why do you want to go to grad school? Well, he had talked to my grandson about being a coder. I didn't even know what a coder was, but my grandson's a coder. And it's a high-paying job. I mean, I think it was what we used to call software programming, but maybe it's something different. But he said, I like what Noah was saying about what he does. Now, Noah works for Amazon and makes a lot of money. I said, well, why don't you get a job? He said, well, I don't have a degree in coding. I said, oh, and you just graduated Cornell with a degree in biomedical science. I said, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I figure you can do whatever you need to do. That's the other thing, just as an aside, Josh. People are so focused on their degree. To me, you're not hiring degrees, you're hiring people. So I reinforced with his wife, his mother and he, I said, let me put you in contact with some people. He's in Auburn. I said, why don't you call Syracuse Research? That's a big, consulting company in Syracuse. I said, call them and say, can I speak to some people who are coders? He said, well, I'm not sure I can do that. I said, you're not asking them to borrow money. You just want to speak to them. And I sent him a whole list of questions, which we have all. And I said, ask them these things. And the questions are simple. They're like, Josh, how did you become a coder? Where did you go to school? What else did you consider? What's the compensation expectations? If you had to do all over again, would you do it? I mean, simple things, right? But you get a lot of information from somebody in a short period of time. And then I said, do that with 3 or 4 people in different companies, and then see if you want to do it. If you want to do it, then we can network and try to get you some interviews. I mean, this is not saving lives. This is simple approach to learning about people, learning about positions, and then pursuing them. I mean, if you say, I'd be impressed if you said, I graduated Cornell with a degree in biomedical engineering. What are you going to say? You can't code? Come on. So I had to, pump him up a little bit about his degree. But it's amazing to me that people don't have any confidence. And I think, like Jesse and I, we live with confidence, right? That's our makeup. But you still don't have to be, Tom Brady to figure this out. This is not that difficult. So it's all about networking. It's about going back to people who are doing it now, and then let's talk about the interview. Now, the interview is a little bit different category. So we set that up with like 10 or 12 questions. And the questions are, now remember, these kids are going to college. The first question is, what's your strength? Let's practice that. Let's talk about it. I want a story, just like Jesse said. I want a metaphor. We get by on that. Then what am I bringing to the college? This is really important. So if I'm Jake and I'm thinking about Hobart William Smith, I'm saying, let me tell you what I'm bringing. I'm mature. I'm in the Navy. I'm not the average kid walking on this campus. And I'm going to be focused and disciplined and determined. You know how many high school people talk like that? Zero. Because they don't know what colleges are looking for. What colleges are looking for are people that are going to succeed. And here's why I'm confident I can succeed at Hobart William Smith. That blows them away. So that's why we think you can't put that in an essay. You can write it in an essay, but nobody believes it. But if you can interview like that, it's powerful. And then in the interview as well, we say, where did you go to school? Did you go to school at Hobart? No, where'd you go? How would you compare it with the Hobart? Oh, I went to Williams. Oh, really? Why'd you go to Williams, not Hobart? Well, I did, so it's conversational. That's the whole theme of this. You got to make it conversational. It can't be an interrogation. And some of the worst interviewers, frankly, are alumni. That happens all the time. So I went to Georgetown, so I'm going to interview somebody at Brighton that wants to go to Georgetown. And now I'm a lawyer in downtown Rochester, and I'm going to tell them about Georgetown. That's not the interview I like. I like the interview with somebody who's an academic head at a department that you're going to major in. Because, most people don't know how to interview. They don't know how to be interviewed, but they don't know how to interview either. So, it's something we really, and parents tell me all the time, Paul, I can't believe they came away from that and they had so much confidence. And it's not rocket science. It's just having a process that you go through and you're covering all the bases. But you really, what I found is, no, this is my own personal opinion, academics are the worst at interviewing. They're the worst at anything. The only thing they do is teach. And you pay them a lot of money. I don't convey that to the students, but they're almost intimidated by the students. I mean, they tell me that. Oh, man, this kid came in, he was asking me all kinds of questions. Well, what do you think the interview is all about? He or she is trying to learn about the college. So it's really important. And the other thing I would suggest, if you haven't thought about this already, it's great to do a mock interview with a friend and let him or her criticize you. People don't do that enough. And you don't have to be a genius to play either part. Just, Leah, that doesn't sound like a good answer to me. Could you rephrase that? That's a big deal. So, we should do that. And I also think, I love the school. I love everything about the church and school. But we should be teaching interview skills in high school. And we don't. We're too busy teaching calculus, which I just love. I can't wait to take another calculus course. And I don't mean to, be critical about that. But we're teaching things that who's ever going to use that? I remember failing geometry. I can't tell you how many times. If it wasn't for the basketball coach getting me through geometry, because he wanted me to play basketball, I would have never got through geometry. So, and we do a lot of things because they've always been done that way. And that's just, I don't know, I find that's kind of crazy. Any other questions? You guys have been great, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Zach. Thank you. And by the way, you got my cell phone number, 202-1636. If you want to chat, strategize, brainstorm, Andy will tell you I'm always talking to people. I love it. Okay? Thank you, Isaac. Thanks, Zach.